All right, quiz tomorrow is on 1.1 through 1.3. All the formulas that you need to have memorized in your head for the quiz tomorrow are on the top of this page. So you need to know these. I'm going to do one question from each section. And then if we have time at the end and want to practice more, I'll go back. But for the first three, we have to find the midpoint and distance for each. So let's start with number 1. So we're going to start with our midpoint formula. The midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. You're looking for the sum of the x's divided by 2, and then the sum of the y's divided by 2. The average of the x's and the average of the y's. So I'm going to label my points as x1, y1, x2, y2, and then plug them in. So this would be 2 plus negative 5 over 2, and 0 plus 12 over 2. What's 2 plus negative 5? So negative 3 over 2 would be our x-coordinate. And then what's 12 divided by 2? 6. So our midpoint would be negative 3 over 2, comma 6. Now let's find our distance. The distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So we already labeled everything. Let's plug it in. We have negative 5 minus 2 squared plus 12 minus 0 squared. Negative 5 minus 2 would be negative 7 squared plus 12 squared. 7 squared is 49. 12 squared is 144. What's 49 plus 144? 193. Can we simplify the square root of 193? Do we have 2 factors of 193? No. So our distance would just be the square root of 193. Simplify it if you can. If you can't simplify, then that would be your answer. So you have the midpoint and the distance. All right, for number 3, right below it, we have to find the endpoint. So it gives us the endpoint and the midpoint. We have to find the other endpoint. So we're going to use our midpoint formula. So our midpoint formula is x comma y. Our midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. Finding the other endpoint. So it gives us the endpoint and the midpoint. We have to find the other endpoint. So we're going to use our midpoint formula. This is the one where we have to find just the x first. So we're working with the x's, and then we'll work with the y's. So our endpoint is going to be our x1 and y1, and our midpoint is just our x and y. That's what it's equal to. Since this is the midpoint formula, it's equal to the midpoint. So we have 3 is equal to x1, which is negative 7, plus x2 over 2. Now, how would we solve for x2? Multiply both sides by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then we're dividing by 2 and multiplying by 2, so they cancel. So 6 is equal to negative 7 plus x2. What would we do next? Add 7. So 13 is equal to x2. So we found our x2. We're going to do the same thing to find our y2, and then we put it together as a point. All right, we're going to do it again, but with the y. So now we have y is equal to y1 plus y2 over 2. So our y, for our midpoint, is negative 1. That's equal to y1, which is 5, plus y2 over 2. Now, what would we do to solve for y2? Multiply by 2. Bless you. So it cancels out. So we have negative 2 is equal to 5 plus y2. Then we subtract by 5. So negative 7 is equal to y2. How would we write our answer? Perfect. 13 comma negative 7. For number 3, another way we can do this is how many numbers does it take to get from negative 7 to 3? George, how many numbers does it take to get from negative 7 to positive 3? 10. We're adding 10 here. Let's write that. Add 10. So we're adding 10 to get from the end point to the midpoint. So to get to the other end point, if we add 10, that gives us 13. Do the same thing for the y's. How many numbers does it take to get from 5 to negative 1? Negative 6. We're subtracting 6. So if I subtract 6 from negative 1, what do I get? Negative 7. So you can kind of do it that way too. So what am I doing to get from negative 6 to 12? Adding 18. So if we add another 18. Oh, be careful here. The midpoint's first. What are we getting to go from 12 to negative 6? We're subtracting 18. So if I subtract another 18, what would my other endpoint be? Negative 24. And then do the same thing with the y's. So to get from 9 to negative 10, what are we doing? Subtracting 19. So if I subtract another 19, negative 29. You can do it mathematically and you'll get it the same. You always do it to the midpoint. So see how far it is from the end point to the midpoint, and that's going to be how far it is to the other end point. So just be careful. You're looking like the midpoint has to be in the middle of them. You can then check your work by taking the 2 endpoints and finding the midpoint. All right, let's look at number 5. We want to find the equation of the circle with the given endpoints of the diameter. So our equation of the circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. So we want to find the center of the circle, which is h comma k, and we want to figure out what r is, which is our radius. So we need our h, k, and r in order to fill it in our equation of the circle. So it gives me the 2 endpoints of the circle. Do I have the center? No. How can I find the center? Find the midpoint. So I'm going to use my midpoint formula. It would be x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. Yeah. So I'm going to label everything and then plug it in. We have x1, y1, x2, y2. So 2 plus negative 6 over 2 and negative 5 plus 9 over 2. 2 plus negative 6 would be negative 4 over 2, and negative 5 plus 9 would be positive 4 over 2. So what would my midpoint be? Negative 2 comma 2. This is our center. The midpoint is the center. So that would be our h and k. The distance of what? Perfect. To find r, the radius, we're looking for the distance from the center to one of the endpoints. So we're looking for the distance from our center to one of our endpoints. It doesn't matter which one. You could pick either one. If you do it right, you'll get the same number. So let's just pick our first point, P, and then I'll label my center as x2 and y2. And then we're going to plug it into our distance formula. Our distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So we have negative 2 minus 2 squared plus 2 minus negative 5 squared. So negative 4 squared plus, what does minus a negative turn into? Plus. So this would be plus 7 squared. So 16 plus 49 would be the square root of 65. So our distance, which is our radius. Now we need to plug it into the equation of the circle. So I have x, what would come next? Plus 2, perfect. We flip the sign when we plug in our point. So x plus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared is equal to 65. It's our radius squared, so the squared cancels out the square root. So it's equal to just 65. So that would be our answer. All right, number 8. Want to identify the center and radius of each of the following. So for 8, what would our center be? Perfect, 3, 0. So we're adding to the x and adding to the y, but you always flip the sign. So it becomes positive 3, and I'm not adding anything to the y. So my k would be 0. And then what's our radius? Perfect. You take the square root of what it's equal to, so that would be 4. Let's do number 9 too. What's our center? 0, 2. Perfect. And then what's our radius? Square root 40, but can we simplify square root 40? What are 2 factors of 40? 4 and 10. 2 factors of 4? 2 factors of 10. I'm circling how many of a kind? 2 of a kind. So what comes to the outside? 2. And what stays on the inside? 10. Perfect. 2 times 5 stays on the inside. So our radius, simplified, would be 2 square root 10. You have to simplify it on the quiz. Let's look at number 12. So we want to write the equation of a line that passes through the point that is parallel to the given line. So parallel, we know what about the slope? Same slope. So what's our slope in the line that's given? Negative 1/3. The rest of the equation of the line that's given doesn't matter. We're only using the line to look at the slope. We ignore the rest of it. Now, do we have enough information to write an equation of the line? Yeah, we have a point and the slope, so what form can we use? Point slope form. So point slope form is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So y minus negative 4, how would we write that? Plus 4 is equal to negative 1/3 times x minus 9. This is our x1 and y1, and we just plug it in. This would be our answer if it either asks for point slope form or if it doesn't specify what form it wants. But what if the question says, leave your answer in slope intercept form? What would we have to do? Awesome. So slope intercept form is what? Y equals mx plus b. So we need to just rearrange this equation to be in y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to distribute the 1/3, negative 1/3. So we have negative 1/3x. What is negative 1/3 times negative 9? Positive 3. Perfect. And then we subtract 4. So remember, our goal is to get the y all by itself. So we just have to undo everything to get it alone. So y is equal to negative 1/3x minus 1. It just so happens that this one is the same equation that we started with, but that's not going to be the case every time. It's just happened here. So it's going to... All right, the next one, we have to write the equation of a line through the given point perpendicular to the given line. What do we know about the slope when it's perpendicular? Opposite reciprocal. In the equation here, can I clearly see what my slope is? No. So what do we have to do? Subtract the 5x. We want to get it to be y equals in slope-intercept form so we can see our slope. So subtract the 5x, get negative 8y is equal to negative 5x plus 3. And then what do we do? Divide everything by negative 8. So y is equal to 5 over 8x minus 3 over 8. What's our slope here?
5 over 8.
5 over 8. Now, is our slope the same? No. What's our slope in our new line going to be? Negative 8 over 5. You have to take the opposite reciprocal. Opposite means that you flip the sign. So since this was positive, our new slope's negative. Reciprocal means that you flip the number. So your new slope is the opposite reciprocal of the slope that you just found. Now, do I have enough information to write a line? Yes, we have a point and we have the slope. So we're going to use point slope form. So y, what would come next?
Y minus y1.
What's our y1?
Negative 9.
So it'd be y plus 3, because we flipped the sign, is equal to negative 8 over 5 times what? Times x minus 2. That would be our answer. Once you find the slope, the rest of the line doesn't matter.
Okay. Clear.
So you just always flip it when it's perpendicular. And you find
It sounded like you were like.
Flip it and change the sign when it's perpendicular. So if it's parallel, like the last one, the slope stays the same. Whatever your slope is stays
But
the
you
same.
still change the signs when you put it into the equation, right?
You flip the sign of the point when you plug it in,
Yeah.
not the slope. All right, first 16. We have to write the equation of a line that passes through the given point and is parallel and perpendicular to the line passing through the new point. So here, it's almost the same thing, but instead of giving us a line, it gives us 2 points. What do you think I need to do first? Find the slope. Always step 1, just like the last 2 questions, we have to find the slope. So let's find our slope. We're going to use our slope formula. So our slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to label my points as x1, y1, x2, y2. So 4 minus 2 over 1 minus negative 3. We get 2 over 4, which simplifies to what? 1/2. So our slope is 1/2. This question is asking for 2 things. It's asking for a line that's parallel and a line that's perpendicular. So let's find our parallel line first. What do we know about the slope when it's parallel? It's the same thing, so we're using the same slope there. What would my equation of a line be here?
Y minus 2 equals.
So we're using the point that it goes through.
Y
Y plus 5.
Y plus 5 is equal to
M
1/2 times
x minus 1.
x minus 1/3. Perfect. So this would be our parallel line. Now let's find one that's perpendicular. What do we know about the slope when it's perpendicular? So what's the opposite reciprocal of 1/2? Negative 2 over 1, which is just negative 2. So let's write our equation of a line. So we have y, what would come next? Y plus 5 is equal to negative 2 times x minus 1/3.
Everything stays the same.
Any questions here? For 19, we want to find the x and y intercepts and write your answer as ordered pairs. So let's start by finding our x-intercept. What do I need to do to find the x-intercept?
Oh, y equals 0.
plug in 0 into the y. So here it gives you f of x, which is just a fancy way of saying y. So that's our y. So we're going to plug in 0 for y. We have 0 is equal to 3 times x squared minus 6x minus 105. How do I solve for x here? Factor. Awesome. Sadly. Make sure you know how to factor for tomorrow. What can we do first to factor here? Take out the GCF. Because my GCF's a number, I'm going to divide everything by 3 and it goes away. Because what's 0 divided by 3? 0. So 0 is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 35. Now, what are two factors of negative 35 that add to negative 2? Negative 7 and positive 5. Perfect. So 0 is equal to x minus 7 times x plus 5. Now, how do I solve for x? Set them both equal to 0. So x minus 7 equals 0 and x plus 5 equals 0. So x is equal to what? And? 7 and negative 5. Now the question said that our answer has to be as a coordinate point. So what would my coordinate point be for each?
7, 0. Oh, yeah.
7, 0, and then negative 5, 0. Because this is the x, so that goes in the x spot. We plugged in 0 for y, so our y is 0. So these would be our two x-intercepts. Let's do the same thing to find our y-intercept. What do I need to do to find the y-intercept? Plug in 0 into x. So I have y is equal to 3 times 0 squared minus 6 times 0 minus 105. So if we're multiplying by 0, it cancels. So what am I left with? Y equals negative 105. So what's my y-intercept? 0, comma, negative 105. Let's look at 23. So this question asks, are the lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? What does it mean for lines to be parallel? Same slope. What about perpendicular? Opposite reciprocal slopes. And then neither would just mean that they're totally different numbers. They're not same slope or opposite reciprocal slope. So for 23, can I see what my slope is right off the bat?
Yeah, same slope.
No, we can't. What do I need to do in order to see the slope?
Move the 3 out.
I want to make it y equals mx plus b. So I can clearly identify the slope. So I'm going to move the 3x to the other side. I need that y all by itself. So negative y is equal to 3x minus 4. What would I do next? Divide everything by negative 1. So y is equal to negative 3x plus 4. We just change the signs of everything. What's our slope here? Slope is negative 3. Now we have to do the same thing in our second line. What would I do first?
No, don't back by. I mean, yeah. Take these out.
Am I factoring?
Oh, you can factor.
What is my goal? What am I trying to do?
Y equals.
I want it to be y equals. I need that y all by itself. So what do I need to do?
Get rid of it.
Move everything to the other side. So I'm going to add 6x. Start by moving that. So 2y plus 8 is equal to 6x. Tabit, what do I do next?
Get rid of the 8.
Get rid of the 8. How?
Subtract.
Subtract 8. So negative 2y is equal to 6x minus 8. And then what? Divide everything by negative 2. So y is equal to negative 3x plus 4. What's my slope here? Negative 3. Are my slopes the same? So what does that mean about the lines? They're parallel. So my slopes are the same thing. So the lines are parallel. What if my slopes were like 1/2 and -1/2? What type of lines would these be? Neither. These would be neither.
Why?
Because they're not reciprocals.
Oh.
I'm just testing you. We want to find the slope of the first line, is your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's subtract. So we have -4y is equal to -3/2x plus 1.
How did you just make it?
I just subtracted the 3/2x to the other side.
Oh, okay.
So now we want to divide everything by -4. This is a good question. So y is equal to, what do I do when I have a fraction and a fraction? Keep, change, flip. Keep the top, change to multiplication, and flip the bottom. So I'm going to do it on the side up here. I have -3/2, change to multiplication. And when I flip the bottom, what does -4 become? -1/4. We're flipping the bottom. It'd be 4/1. So then when we multiply fractions, how do we multiply? Straight across. So this would be +3/8. X minus 3. So our slope would be 3/8. So if you are dividing with a fraction, you keep, change, flip. Sorry, it's 1 divided by -4. It doesn't matter, really, because we're only looking at the slope, but this would be -1/4. All right, just for extra practice, let's practice adding fractions. What if I had 1/2 plus 1/3? How would I add these?
You have to have a common denominator.
I need a common denominator, so what would I change the first fraction to? 3/6. I'm multiplying the top and the bottom by 3. And then what would I change the second fraction to? 2/6. I multiply the top and the bottom by 2. How do we add fractions? Add the numerators. So that would be 5 over, what's my denominator? 6. So you need a common denominator when you're adding fractions.